Tasmania has a really important role to play in this referendum, and it's my sincere hope that the state will get behind the yes vote and support this change to our constitution, which will recognise Australia's first people in our constitution and acknowledge those thousands of years of history that will add to who we are as a fabric of our community and as a society. The yes vote is a very important vote because it provides an opportunity for us to finally listen to Aboriginal people across our country. I've heard some remarkable Aboriginal Australians share their reasons for why they're supporting a yes vote this constitution referendum. Some of the most profound conversations and arguments I've heard have come from Aboriginal women who've talked about the importance it means to them and their children to do what we can to reduce the gap, the inequality that currently exists between white and non-white Australians, our first Australians, and to make sure that we can improve outcomes for Aboriginal people right across our country. It's a really simple question that will be put to us in this referendum, and I would think that most people would see the sense in supporting a yes vote because it's simply about recognition and consultation. And at the end of the day, we have an opportunity to set the course of our nation and our state towards a better future that's simply about compassion, recognition and consultation. And I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Noel to speak with us now about the work that he's been doing here in Tasmania and how we can all work together to support the Yes campaign, whether it's out campaigning, door knocking, letterboxing, supporting conversations in our community and accessing truthful information about what this vote actually means.
Thank you, Rebecca, and I'm so very pleased to be with Rebecca and her Labor team here in Tasmania. Yesterday I had the great pleasure of presenting with former Premier Peter Gutwein. It's so pleasing to me that we have a bipartisan message here in Tasmania. The former Premier and the current Premier joining with Labor and joining with the Greens in advocating a yes vote in the referendum. Tasmania is so very important to this referendum. It's where the nation meets the state. We need the state in order for the nation to improve. Queensland needs Tasmania. New South Wales needs Tasmania. Every great reform Tasmania has been involved in. And so I'm here for a second tour of duty. I was up in a very cold and windy Ulverston the last time I was here, and Devonport and Launceston, and the reception that I think we're getting around the place is very, very pleasing. Now, we're behind in the polls, but we've always been the underdog. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are 3% of Australia. We've got to convince 97% of Australia, and that is never an easy task. We're always facing the uphill. The other mob just have to push the cart back down. It's easy for them. And this morning in the papers we see another report about the No campaign using a deliberate strategy of fear and misinformation in order to advance their cause. They're explicitly training their telephone callers in the art of arousing emotions of anger, emotions of fear. That's the deliberate strategy of the No campaign. Whereas we necessarily have to speak to optimism, to faith and to hope and a better future. We can't engage in negativity. We've got to hold out for the better angels in the Australian public. We've got to really get out there over the next 5 weeks, engage with ordinary Australians about the concerns they have listen carefully, provide honest answers to the questions they have. I landed yesterday at the airport and I was confronted by a middle-aged lady who's told me from the outset she was going to vote no, but she wanted some answers to some questions she had. And I tell you, at the end of our conversation, she told me, okay, now I understand. These concerns I have, you have answered, and I'm going to vote yes. I really believe if you focus on the actual words that we're adopting in this constitutional change, you will then understand that all of the kind of fantastic imaginings that have been alleged against this referendum are baseless. They're a complete exaggeration. Just read the ordinary words of the amendment that we will make on October the 14th, and Australians, I believe, reasonable Australians, will come on board. I just think a message of saying, if you don't know, vote no, is almost insulting to the democratic public. It's insulting to our democracy. If you don't know, learn about it. Learn about the truth. We're appealing to hearts and heads. We want people to understand what they're doing. We want them to be generous in the spirit they bring to the referendum. But this idea that we rouse anger and fear of Indigenous people is a very sad development in our democracy. And I believe this referendum is going to test the health of our democracy. Are we going to be able to have a reasonable debate and discussion that is within the parameters of truth and honesty? Or are we going to be overrun by people who are trying to arouse emotional responses in us? So I'm very pleased to be in Tasmania. We've got our work cut out. We must not rest for the next 5 weeks. I've already shaven about 2 mils off my RM Williams. Somebody's going to have to shout me a new pair at the end of this. But really, I'm very grateful to the Yes campaign here in Tasmania. They're so very important to our cause. 37,000 is the number of volunteers we have. There's been no bigger mobilisation of volunteer effort than this one. So we're by every means still in the race. We're the ones trying to push the cart up the hill. The other mob are just got the easy business of trying to push it back down. And I believe on October the 14th, if the people of Tasmania do the right thing, you will help the nation. You will help Australia chart the best path forward for all of us. Thank you. For sure.
I'll step forward again.
Beck and Sarah, you guys have to go to the meeting. What's
Do
your
we have a
kind of...
committee? Hang on for freeze.
Are you all right?
Craig and I go now. We can start. Sorry.
Noel, you mentioned those reports today about the no campaign strategies. What can your campaign realistically do to counter that kind of strategy?
We've just got to be, we've got to outlove them, really. You know, there's no path for us to victory based on misrepresentation and appealing to the worst inclinations that we all have, right? I've got a bad inclination sometimes, but I don't want anybody arousing that in me when I'm making such an important choice as this, because I'm capable of a higher inclination, one that's understanding of what is at stake here. This is a once in a nation's lifetime opportunity to put something right. That's what's in front of us. And I can only say that there is no matching equivalent to what the No campaign are doing. We can't out-fear them or out-anger them or outrage them. We can only appeal to people's heads so they understand what we're doing, and their hearts so that they have compassion for the children that are going to gain, the future generations of Indigenous and non-Indigenous children that are going to gain from what we're doing here. Because this is going to be good not just for Aboriginal children, it's going to be good for Australian children of the future. They won't be dealing with this, the bad stuff that we're still surrounded by today. They're going to have a new Australia where this is put behind us. And I think it behoves our generation to do the right thing for our future generations so that they have a better future and a better relationship.
A few weeks ago, Yes campaign strategies were leaked to The Australian, with the newspaper saying volunteers had been instructed to name a villain when convincing people to vote yes. Is that kind of messaging likely to swing people over to your side?
Oh, absolutely not. I say to the Yes campaign, we've got to keep it positive. There's no pathway for us to be negative like our opponents. They just have more to draw on than us in terms of negativity. We have got to keep our eyes on the prize. We've got to be forward-looking, we've got to be upward-looking, and we've got to believe that in this modern era of social media and all kinds of devious kind of manipulation of the population, we've got to believe that a positive democratic campaign can succeed. I mean, what kind of democracy will we have if a positive democratic campaign cannot win the support of the Australian public? This is going to be a real test. This referendum is going to be a real test of our democracy at this stage. Are we going to be buried by the trolls of social media, or are we going to rise above that? Are we going to rise above that and have a serious democratic conversation about some unfinished business that we now have the opportunity to settle and finally put behind us?
The polling shows that support for a yes vote is continuing to collapse. What do you and other members of the Yes 23 campaign need to do to
There's a massive group in the middle. There's a massive group in the middle, up to 30%, that are a combination of yes, soft yeses, soft no's, and genuinely undecided people. All of the polls have their own methods about how to allocate that 30% in the middle. My advice to the Yes 23 campaign, and what I am doing over the next 5 weeks, is to relentlessly go out there, have the conversations with the doubters, sit down, take their concerns seriously, get them to understand that if you read the provision itself, many of the answers, the questions you have, are answered in the actual provision. And that has to be our aim over the next 5 weeks.
Tasmania, you've been here for a couple of days. What's your feeling about down here? Do you reckon this is going to be a statement that's going to make a big difference in which way the vote goes?
Oh, it's absolutely critical. This state is going to be very decisive to the outcome of the referendum. The people of Tasmania have always been part of the coalition of the willing and the good in the past. Remember that every reform has dissenters. When women gained the vote in South Australia more than 100 years ago, there were strong dissenters. There were people who didn't want it to happen. And South Australia led the rest of the country, led the rest of the world. And same with Australia itself. Federation was no foregone conclusion. It was actually opposed in Western Australia and Queensland. Tasmania was always a part of the leading coalition that brought the colonies together, to form Australia. And what a great thing they did. You know, who now thinks the No campaign was sensible back in the 1890s? The fact of the matter is that in order to achieve good things, good people have got to lead. And that's what I'm hoping the people of Tasmania will do in this referendum.
Are you worried that the cost of living crisis is eroding over support?
You know, a vote like this, kind of the level of struggle that people are having, the most amount of empathy I've ever heard for the struggle of ordinary Australians has come from Aboriginal communities. You know, in the Aboriginal communities, the costs of food and household items are 3 times the cost of cans in my region. 3 times the cost, and they've got 1/3 of the income. So you can imagine this cost of living crisis is absolutely tragic for people who live in Aboriginal communities. They know exactly what ordinary Australians are suffering here, and they're extremely empathetic about it. I really know that the mothers who make the grocery choices every week, every day, anxious about every dollar, they're capable of empathising with the struggle of mothers and grocery buyers in remote communities. The struggle is the same, and the hardship is probably even harder. Yes, we would like a referendum in a time of prosperity and better economic news, but we're going into this referendum with empathy and open hearts, so I don't see that that's going to be a reason why people will say no. Of course, we need to get their focus. We need people to focus on what's at hand here, but I am not at all convinced that Australians won't do the right thing.
As you mentioned, you've been down to Tasmania twice already, but there's a lot of campaign. Can we expect to see you again?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, you're going to get sick of me by the time this referendum is over, and my fellow campaigners are also doing the same thing across the country in Western Australia, South Australia. I came directly from Townsville in my home state, and we're going all over the countryside. We're going to leave no stone unturned, and I just want to really boost our Yes 23 campaigners in this state to continue the campaign until the last moment. It's not over. The most important poll is the poll on October the 14th.
Are there particular towns or regions or groups within Tasmania that you'll be targeting?
Oh no, it's you know, we've got the whole community to target. I want to target the soft no's, the people who are inclined to vote no. I want to have a conversation with them about, okay, so what's the hang up here? What's the problem? Tell me your concerns. Ask me your questions. I'll take on any question. I'm willing to talk to people about any question they have. In fact, the harder the question, the more I will welcome it, because we need to get this out. We need to explain what the truth is, and we need to reassure people that this is a very safe amendment. I said to a group the other day, you know, you put the Geiger counter on this, you won't get any kind of reaction. It's as inert as you can get a constitutional provision to be. It's safe as. And we had former High Court Chief Justices really put this to the test, and they've advised us on the best set of wording. This is going to be a safe but advantageous thing to do.
You said you rolled in the hard questions. What's the hardest one you've been asked so far?
Oh, you know, the question about inequality. Is this treating people unequally? And my answer to that is that, well, firstly, we're recognising people before 1788. You know, it's not unequal to recognise people who were here before. It's just a recognition of fact. There were Aboriginal people here prior to 1788. And in relation to inequality, the special mistreatment actually started in the Constitution in 1901. We want to correct that. We want to correct the original mistreatment and achieve equality. So, yes, there are questions like that I answer all the time, and I believe that, you know, a sizable percentage of the people that receive explanations like this start to think, oh yeah, that sounds fair. Thank you.